Live streaming now, Chair.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. Just to make everybody aware that this is a live meeting and it goes on the webcast, and an icon will appear on the top left of the Zoom screen saying live on YouTube. So my name is Amanda Carter and I'm the councillor for Carvely and Farsley, or one of the councillors for Carvely and Farsley, and I'm the chair of the Outer West Community Committee, which covers Carvely and Farsley, Farnley and Wortley and Pudsey. And there are ward councillors from each of those areas. There are 3 in each area. I'd like to start today's meeting by confirming that it meets with the requirements of the council's constitution, even though members are now meeting remotely. And can we begin the meeting by asking all the attendees to mute their microphones unless you're speaking, because it gets very difficult sometimes with the disruption in the background. We do have, in case I go offline, we do have a vice chair who is Councillor David Blackburn. But again, I would like to appoint a deputy vice chair, if you like, in case that goes down. And I would like to propose Trish Smith. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Thank you. Could I ask all councillors to introduce themselves, starting with Councillor Peter Carlill?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Peter Carlill, Carvely and Farsley Ward.
Councillor Andrew Carter.
Councillor Andrew Carter, Carvely and Farsley Ward.
Councillor David Blackburn.
Did you get that? No.
No.
Councillor David Blackburn, Farnley and Wortley Ward. Must have pressed the button twice.
Councillor Anne Blackburn.
Councillor Anne Blackburn, Farnley and Wortley Ward.
Councillor Anne Forsyth.
Good afternoon, Councillor Anne Forsyth, Farnley and Wortley Ward.
Councillor Mark Harrison.
Councillor Mark Harrison, Pudsey Ward.
Councillor Simon Seary.
Yeah, Councillor Simon Seary, Pudsey Ward.
Councillor Trish Smith.
Councillor Trish Smith, I represent Pudsey Ward. Good afternoon.
Thank you. That's all of our councillors. Now, could I ask the officers to introduce themselves, starting with Mike Stevenson?
Afternoon, everyone. Mike Stevenson, Localities Officer for the Outer West Community Committee.
Liz Jarman.
Afternoon, everyone. Liz Jarman, Head of Stronger Communities.
Debbie Oldham.
Debbie Oldham, Clerk to the Community Committee.
Fahad Iqbal.
Good afternoon, I'm Fahad Iqbal. I'm the Engagement Support Officer for Outer West.
Finn Campbell.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Finn Campbell. I'm the Team Leader for Forward Planning in the Transport Strategy Department.
Paul Foster.
Hi, I'm Paul Foster. I'm Transport Strategy Manager in Highways and Transportation.
And Inspector Philip Gill of West Yorkshire Police.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Phil Gill, Leeds West Neighbourhood Policing Team Inspector.
Thank you, everybody. So we'll move to the agenda now and crack on as fast as we can. Can I ask the clerk to go through the agenda items 1 to 5, please?
Thank you. Under agenda item 1, there are no appeals against refusal of inspection of documents. Agenda item 2, there are no exempt items. And agenda item 3, there are no late items. Agenda item 4, could I ask members to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests? I'll take silence as there are none. And agenda item 5, there are no apologies today, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. So agenda item 6 is the minutes of the last community meeting, which is on the 18th of January. Have you
Yes,
all?
Chair. Yes,
yeah,
Chair.
you've all. Yes.
Can I raise on the minutes the issues around Richmond House, and just to say that I have tabled an amendment to the council's budget, which will be debated next Wednesday. The effect of my amendment, if passed, would be to keep Richmond House open and to engage in much more positive dialogue with the NHS about the long-term funding and retention of this facility. I wanted to inform members of the Community Committee I had tabled that amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Do we have any more comments on the minutes? Can we accept them as read? And true and correct? I'll assume that silence means yes. Okay, on to item agenda 7, which is again about Richmond House. We've had another submission from Sylvia Landals from the Leeds Hospital Alert. And as this was and is a very important item and very important to our area of the whole of the Outer West, I felt that we ought to allow her to come back and ask some questions, although they won't be able to answer today. They'll have to be answered at a later time by Adult Social Care. So I'm going to hand over to the clerk, please.
Thank you. So the questions posed by Ms Landals are as follows. Why is it not possible to negotiate with the NHS to have therapeutic input at Richmond House again? This joint working of physiotherapists, occupational therapists, including one expert on splints and a joint care manager, worked well in the care home staff. This is needed more than ever now for those people who are stuck in homes waiting for assessments by social workers under the Care Act and the Mental Capacity Act. New care packages to be put together to be able to go to so that the patients can go home. I know from personal experience that this is an even lengthier wait at the moment due to the COVID restrictions. Second question, how many people, how long are they waiting, and how much is the council paying for these people who are stuck in private homes waiting for reassessments and packages of care? Couldn't this be spent on professionals for Richmond House instead? Question 3, I was not assured to learn that the large number of vacancies in private care homes in West Leeds as a measure of availability of places and stability of the market. Has Adults and Health done a survey to find out how many of these care homes businesses will survive the pandemic? And the last question, question 4. Surely it is premature to plan the closure of Richmond House before a full study is done into the acknowledged gap in the need for the places for people with complex needs, including dementia and nursing care, which Kath Roth said is being trialled in the 10 pioneering places at the South Leeds Recovery Hub. And that's it. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Debbie. Any members got any comments?
Only that, Chair, that we should ask. There's a very important questions that have been raised, and we should ask Kath Roth to answer them as quickly as possible, so it can be reported to this committee.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It is a big issue for our area, and a lot of people very concerned. So I'm pleased that Sylvia's come back with those questions. Okay, thank you, Andrew. We'll move on now to item 8, which is a verbal update from Neighbourhood Policing Team. Phil Gill.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is the first meeting I've been to today, so if I start going off with something that's not relevant, then please shout up and point me in the right direction. Things are going really well across Outer West. The 3 teams at Pudsey, Farmland Wetland and Farmland are still all sergeant-led. Obviously, we've had the massive impact, as everybody, with COVID. That started to reduce in terms of the impact it's having directly on the neighbourhood team. We are obviously still receiving calls for service in relation to COVID, but these are predominantly being dealt with by our patrol colleagues with some support from my team. I'll just go through each area around what the current priorities are. So if we start at the bus station, the current priorities are the antisocial behaviour in and around the bus station at Pudsey and the nearby vicinity. Second one is antisocial behaviour and drug dealing around Queen's Park, and the third one is antisocial vehicle use across the roads linked to the Fatal 4. We are having our 6 weekly tasking meetings with various partners and elected members. All 3 wards have had the meetings this week. Going to Pudsey in relation to the bus stations, a lot of good partnership work ongoing with Metro. We are aware that the issue hasn't completely gone away, but reports are that things have improved, as have things around Queen's Park. and the surrounding areas. In relation to our work around antisocial behaviour vehicle use, we've started to issue a lot more tickets. We've managed to get the Smiley SID, which is the portable camera where we can detect speeding, and work with the community to give some feedback to them. So in the Pudsey area, I think those three priorities need to remain the same, unless anybody's got anything different about that, and I'll move on. No. Next
I'm
one.
hearing, yeah, David Blackburn.
I'll wait till he's finished. I just want to
Okay.
comment.
Okay. I'll go to Farmland and Carver. So we held a meeting this week in relation to the first priority, which is the antisocial use of off-road motorcycles and quad bikes down in the Carver area. I also am aware that is an issue over in Pudsey. We are working in partnership with Bradford East neighbourhood team and their Opsteer side team, along with the off-road bike team at Leeds. We are looking at working with the Leeds Antisocial Behaviour team and getting a closure order in the main location down there, which will hopefully come into play around April time and look to go on for 6 months. The other issue in the ward for Carver and Farsley is the speeding and antisocial vehicle use on Bradford Road from Dawson's Corner up to the roundabout. We're going to be working with our colleagues in the Road Traffic Department to try and increase our visibility there in the deployment of the Pro Laser. And the last one there is to tackle residential burglary by targeting offenders and some through crime prevention advice. We received from funding, which has been supported through the local councillors to try and get some equipment to do some target hardening around those people who feel most vulnerable to burglary across the ward. And then if I move on to Farmland Wetland, the priorities are antisocial behaviour in the Wincoves and the Butterbowls, antisocial behaviour and drug dealing on the Heights, drug dealing in and around Cow Close Road, and issues around at St Wilfrid's Church. I'm pleased to report that Port Call Service in relation to a lot of the issues around antisocial behaviour has decreased. We've charged a couple of individuals, which I think has had a significant impact on our call service. They've currently got bail conditions with a curfew, which has allowed us to closely monitor them. There's a lot of drug warrants being executed in the area, and that obviously encourage people to report intelligence to us so we can action it. And that's the update I've got for the 3 wards, and I'm obviously open to take any questions.
Thank you, Phil. I think it's concerning that the antisocial behaviour has risen during COVID. Some crime has dropped, but the quad bike, and I'm sure it's across the whole of the city, is particularly bad. And the racing on the A647, which takes, after 10 o'clock at night. And some of it could be easily solved, like the A647 racing, the police are there during the day, and I'm not blaming the police for this. I blame entirely the West Yorkshire Casualty Reduction Partnership, who won't put fixed cameras there. The police are having to do their work during the day, and yes, they are capturing some motorists speeding, but the big issue is that at night time, when the racing is taking part, it's not only antisocial, it's downright dangerous. They're going at speeds of plus 70 sometimes, and we can't do anything about it. That's just a comment, really. So first of all, got David Blackburn, then Councillor Simon Seary, then Councillor Trish Smith.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, can I understand my wife, Councillor Anne Blackburn, has already done this at the tasking meeting early this morning, but I thought it's necessary we give it a bit more wider publicity, if you like, for the help the police were a week or so ago when we had all the flooding down the ring road. I've got to say they manned, if you like, the barricades for about 6 hours before our highways department decided to turn up. We have taken this up with director, but can we say we thank West Yorkshire Police for doing their bit anyway? They were really good. Just on the report, unless we're missing something, I think it seems to me my residents in Wortley must be extremely good and not commit any crimes. I'm sure there must be something there that we're not picking up. But as I say, I'm encouraged that by some levels of crime coming down, and then really, I mean, if you look at it, what's been reported there is entirely what was there in the middle of the summer, you know. So things haven't really changed apart from the levels probably dropped. Just which is what I want to raise is the new tasking meetings. I was chair. I think I was chair then when we stopped having the tasking meetings, and certainly I went to meetings centrally on what we were going to replace them with. And I've got to say, while some of the information might be quite useful, and I ain't getting up people that go in there, because actually what the people that go in there are doing the job, but in no way does it represent what we were promised at the meetings. I remember going to one where Paul Money was there, and in the leaders' boardroom it was, regarding that before we had lockdown and that. And as I said, I just do not see that it represents a replacement for that. And I just want, you know, would you like a comment on it?
I think, Councillor, I'm happy to have a discussion away from this meeting with you if you don't think it's suiting what's required in your ward. I mean, I invite opinions from the other elected members at present if they also think it's not working. The tasking meetings that I think you're referring to were before my time, so I don't know what you used to get. But I'm more than happy to have these conversations with you around what you think we can do better. I can't promise you that we can completely change it, but if there's something that you want that I can give you, then I certainly will do. But I'll certainly invite comments from the other elected members if they think that things can be improved, because I'm open to change things.
I mean, clearly you can't go back to how we were, because we're not allowed to do, because some information you were giving then you can't do now. But and I've got to say that's accepted, and that's not your fault. But no. As I say, it just seems to me it's an halfway house, and I mean, I don't go to them. I mean, when we had the old tasking meetings, the Farmland Wetland ones were attended by, because we only could send one councillor, and of course what that did was that helped to some respect is in the information we got, because that councillor could report that information back to us, knowing fully what the situation was, without, if you like, telling us stuff we shouldn't know, if you understand what I'm meaning. So I think that helped with that situation. But as I say, I just don't think it's what was promised when we had the meetings in Civic Hall about what we're going to replace it with.
Okay, no, I'm happy to speak to you separately and find out what you think, how it can be improved and what you'd like in addition.
Okay, we'll arrange something later. Okay, right.
Thank you, David. Simon?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, obviously we were elected just after the new process that had been in and the tasking meetings. And I've got to say that, you know, thank you very much for the information we get. We're able to really get into details of where the issues are, like with the bus station. So, no, thank you very much. Again, you know, even outside the tasking meetings, the communication is really good with the police. And thank you very much, because it is a joined up work in progress. And that's it, really. I'd just like to say thank you very much to the team that, you know, without your support, we wouldn't have moved many of these issues on so quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Trish?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that, Phil. I thank you and the team for the excellent working partnership that we have with you. You know, the way you react with us is absolutely fantastic. I'd like to put special thanks on to Mick Cox, who's taken the window shock alarms initiative forward with myself in Pudsey. And that's an excellent partnership working. We've identified key areas where you know they're most at risk. We've identified the actual window on each of those properties that's most at risk, and we've found a way forward. So excellent, thank you very much. 2 points that obviously we've raised that are a worry: the ASB and drug reporting. I'm lumping together because drug use is a form of ASB, isn't it? And the quads and antisocial driving are a worry. So I do think we need to keep on top of those, which I know you guys are. So thank you very, very much.
Oh, thank you. I think ASB and drugs do come hand in hand, you're right. In terms of, if we go back to ASB and we have our civil powers through injunctions, prior to lockdown, we were in the process of getting some injunctions set around the Pudsey area, but due to what happened with lockdown, the courts have stopped a lot of those injunctions happening. And obviously we've come forward, 9-10 months now, but we are using those powers where possible. I'm fully aware that the quad bikes are a big issue, well, across all wards really, in reality. It does affect everybody. There's a lot of work to be done. I know that it's certainly going to be one of our priorities moving over. As we come into these summer months, it's only going to increase the calls for service in relation to quad bikes. And also we'll be working with our off-road bike team, which I'm responsible for the district off-road bike team as well. So I will make sure that West get their equal share of the time from that team.
Thank you, Phil. Andrew?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to go back to the issue you raised at the start, but first of all, to add my thanks to everybody else's, to Phil and his team. Not only are they really addressing our priorities, and they are, but the reporting back from you, Phil, has been extremely good, and we're very thankful. It enables us to keep our constituents informed. We've got a really good working relationship, so I'm sure you'll pass our comments on to your team. And so on the A647 Bradford Road, to be fair, this is not, and I stress, not a criticism of the police at all. It's a criticism of a West Yorkshire Casualty Reduction Partnership and of Leeds City Council's Highways Department, I regret to say. Policing during the day is all well and good, but as Amanda said, the problems arise at night. I think it's been good fortune, to say the least, there hasn't been a very nasty accident indeed, late at night or in the early hours of the morning. The warnings have been there. Constituents passed information toward members about being able to hear the noise of the engines hundreds of yards away from the actual road, particularly during the summer when windows tend to be open. But I cannot accept any longer that the council hide behind this casualty reduction partnership. A city of 750,000 people should have a council that can decide where the priorities are for cameras and where they aren't a priority, and not have to rely on representatives from 4 other local authorities to agree with them. And I wonder, and this is, I suppose, we've got the people talking to us about connecting Leeds and the huge investments going into various different schemes. We're spending millions on the A647. Surely we can afford to put fixed speed cameras and save the police a lot of time and effort and actually catch the culprits causing the problem. And I do have to say that if there were to be a nasty accident, heaven forbid, I wonder what the health and safety executive would say to a local authority and a so-called casualty reduction partnership that's been warned over and over and over again by residents and councillors alike. It really is time, I think. And this is, as I say, this is not being directed at you, Phil, or your team. It is infuriating and extremely concerning to ward members and the general public. Some of the speeding on there is horrific. Sorry to go on so long about it, but every couple of days we're getting people coming on to us.
I think I really do appreciate what you're saying, Councillor, and I'm certainly not going to disagree. What I will do is I will make sure that I keep putting our officers there when we can. I'll keep getting the support of our road traffic team, but they're only useful when they're there, aren't they? And if they're there for a couple of hours on Friday night, then it's only that couple of hours it's any good, and then the next night they're not there. I will raise the concerns with my SLT to let them know that it's come up in this meeting once again and that we really are concerned, and I'll get some feedback to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Phil. That's very helpful. David, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, yes, please. I've just got to say I totally agree with Andrew about the problems we have when we talk about cameras, and some of the West Yorkshire Road Safety Partners, some of the criteria they work by are simply stupid, and I've had this on stretches at Ring Road where I think there should be cameras because you come down accidentally bypass and they think they're still on a motorway and they're not. So as I say, it is beyond belief sometimes what the answers have, and Andrew remember this when we got them about some cameras in North Leeds once when we were both on cabinet, and we sent them back, if you remember, Andrew.
Thank you. Andrew, did you want to come back in, or is your hand still up? Okay. Paul Foster.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to obviously understand the points that are being made around that. The camera partnership obviously do work by rules that are set nationally around speed cameras and where they can be placed. And so understand exactly that we need to look at and review those criteria and push them as far as we can. But, you know, the partnership there between the multiple authorities and the police do have to work by certain rules. And so, you know, absolutely understand the concerns that people have, but they are restricted in what they can do.
I think part of the issue that not just us, but the general public have is that it's a body that is unaccountable and unelected, and it seems to just do what it wants, and the criteria no longer makes any sense. It's completely outdated because of the antisocial behaviour of motorists, which has become more and more apparent in the last few years. So I think that it's absolutely vital that something is done about it. And I appreciate what you're saying about national legislation, but we really do need to address this. Okay, now then, David, do you want to come back in? And Anne Blackburn?
Just picking up on that point, it's the inconsistencies in how that is carried out. I have had the West Yorkshire Road Safety Partnership turn us down for cameras in various parts of my wards because there were fields on one side and houses on the other. Well, if you actually go up Whitehall Road, across the border into Birkinshaw, you will find speed cameras there, and there's houses on one side and fields on the other. And so they don't always actually follow their own criteria.
No, you're absolutely right, David. I've noticed that. Okay, Anne Blackburn, then Andrew Carter.
There we are. Yes, thank you, Chair. First of all, can I just go back to about the when you mentioned about the motorcycles. Now, I don't know if this is related to what has been mentioned or not, but I saw an off-road motorcycle come on Cowclose Road probably, I don't know, about 10 days ago, and it stopped outside the corner shop, and it had someone else with him, but it had no plates on it. It was, to me, a trial bike. In fact, so I did speak to the driver, and I believe it being that they just said, "Oh yes, well we've been riding round." he wasn't from our area. I got the feeling he'd come down from Pudsey. What I'm thinking is, if these are trial bikes, is it a matter of them coming down from Post Hill? You know, because we've had problems where people that go on Post Hill that can come from sort of any of our 3 wards. Because he did say to me, I says, oh, where do you live? I wanted to find out if it was local. Oh, Pudsey. So I think he must have been passing through. All I'm saying is it was a trial bike.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so if trial bikes are the problem that you're talking about, obviously the other matter on traffic on well, in our case, the ring road, more than anything, it is late at night. And what happens is, I think it's because the roads are more clearer on the night, even in inverted commas normal circumstances. I've seen, you know, over time a car maybe go through lights because there's there's nothing else going on that road at that time. And they're not thinking about a pedestrian, you know, that might be crossing or anything. But we do need some, I do think that they should be putting cameras on the main roads so that they can pick up speeding, whether it be during the day or night. That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Andrew, did you want to come back in?
Yes, please. To go back to what the highways officer said, the guidance, it's not legislation, it's guidance that the government was brought in because some local authorities were using speed cameras not to reduce casualties and speed, but to make money. That's why the guidance was brought in. It is not legislation, but what we've done in West Yorkshire is to bind ourselves to a 5-authority approach. The idea being that there would be some consistency across West Yorkshire. But as David Blackburn has pointed out, there is no consistency because you can look at cameras on some roads and the absence of them on others and scratch your head as to why on earth they're there in one place and not in another. So at the end of the day, it just seems to me that it's a massively bureaucratic system. Not for the first time, councils and this particular bureaucracy is hiding behind government guidance, which it refers to as legislation, which it's not. And it's time something was done about it. And we've gone on and on and on about this. And ultimately, regrettably, there will be a very nasty accident. And then it'll be the usual thing, oh, why didn't we do something? Well, we've got an opportunity because we're spending or proposing to spend millions of pounds yet again on this road. And there's your opportunity to put fixed cameras in place that catch the culprits late at night when they're racing around.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Carlill.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, completely agree with the difficulties obviously we have with this specific road and some of the comments about the criteria for the speed cameras, because it whether or not the A647 meets the criteria specifically, we know the problems, and from a mile away I can hear the speeding at night coming up and down that road, and I'm in the estate behind Dawson's Corner. So we know that. I do think there's a real difficulty around that separation that I know in many times in the discussions I've had with highways officers that highways officers at Leeds agree with us and have put some pressure on at the safety, the casualty reduction partnership to try and change or interpret that guidance differently in order to put these in. What about as a suggestion that we see whether somebody from the partnership themselves could come to this meeting to explain to us why we can't have cameras in that particular spot? Because I know it's an issue that all members in Carville and Farsley are very aware of and have been calling for. And also it seems to be having issues around the rest of the ward. But I think while we're going through two different bodies of going to the council and then to the partnership, it would be good to have the partnership here to explain to us exactly why this problem can't be solved, and to see what we then do about it, and to hear these concerns directly.
Thank you, Peter. If you go on their website, you can't even find out who they are because they're not listed, which is appalling. We know that they've got a representative from each highway department in each authority, and somebody from the police, and there may well be somebody from the fire service as well. I don't know. No idea who chairs it, but yeah, we could ask them here. Could you arrange that, Mike?
Hi, Chair.
Andrew,
Yeah, no
did
problem.
you come back in?
Yeah, I agree with that, Chair. Sorry to come back in. I agree that it would be useful to invite them if they'll turn up. But how many more months? You know, it just goes on and on and on. And Leeds is supposed to be the regional capital, and we can't even decide where to put a speed camera. Good God, it's gone on for too long. And Mike, we need to make it very clear to these people. We want answers. Enough's enough.
No problem. I'll reach out.
Yeah, and one of the questions that they will be asked is not just what the criteria is, but where they've got speed cameras, for example, on the A65 from Horsworth Roundabout through to Rawdon, and they've just put a new digital one in there. What are the fatalities and serious accidents rate along that road and similar roads? Okay, now I'm conscious of time, moving on. So can we move on to the next item agenda, which is the transport strategy?
Okay, thank you, Chair. My colleague Finn Campbell's going to put the slides up, present them. I will, conscious of time, will try and go through this relatively quickly, because obviously within the pack of information, members will have had the executive summary for the transport strategy, and a number of members have also already engaged in this through either executive board, the Climate Emergency Advisory Committee, and other places where we've already presented. But obviously this is some members won't have seen this or had the opportunity to comment on where we're at with this. So the strategy started with a vision that we've come up with of a city where you don't need a car, and what that is, it's around making sure that everyone has an affordable, accessible, zero carbon and healthy choice in alternative and how they could travel. So this is about changing the system that we've got at the moment and looking for how we can provide for those journeys. If we go on to the next slide, Finn, that's around making a city where it's easy to get around, where it's equal for everyone, including those with disabilities, the elderly, the young people have all got that opportunity to travel, making an efficient use of the space and street space and the vehicles that we have in the city, and therefore reducing our environmental impact that transport currently has. And as we say, making sure that that choice can be made by everyone, and they're given an information necessary and the services available to do that, which are not all there at the moment. We've got a lot of work to do to get to that sort of vision. And I'm sure, as we've heard at many other previously when we've been to your committees and when we go out to public consultation on anything, we hear these views around how bus services don't work, concerns over road safety, how it's not easy to walk and cycle into places. So people, this is a strategy that tries to meet those concerns and move us forward. So Finn, next slide. So it's been designed with these sort of three key objectives in mind. One, tackling climate change, so reducing the impact, as I've said, in terms of the emissions from the transport sector. Delivering inclusive growth, and that's about making sure that everyone in the city has access to the working, leisure and education opportunities that exist, making sure that those connections are available. You doing that in an efficient way, so utilising the road space well, much more efficient, which not only saves individuals and businesses time and therefore helps the economy, but also by having a more efficient system, then each individual journey should cost less to people. So changing the amount people have to pay for their transport costs and really reducing that, and a key output from a strategy like this. And then thirdly is the health agenda. Clearly, they're both, you know, our physical and mental health can benefit from active travel, from walking and cycling, and that's across all age groups. Clearly, then transport has an impact, and as we've just been debating, you know, road safety absolutely crucial. You know, the effect of transport on people's lives and the injuries. You know, there's 350 plus killed and seriously injured accidents across Leeds every year, apart from last year where there was a reduction, but that was down to the sort of COVID effect. You know, we've got to look at how we can reduce that and have an approach that has everyone involved, all the partners, in terms of making sure we've got education, enforcement, and the infrastructure's right. And then also on that improving health, there's the air quality issues, and obviously the emissions from transport, and not just the carbon emissions, but also the air quality emissions in terms of particulates and our health within the city as well. So that we want to reduce that impact. So that's why we've done this strategy, what we're trying to achieve. And then moving on to the next, we've set ourselves some targets within that, and I hope you'll welcome the approach around Vision Zero, which is around moving to a zero killed and seriously injured on Leeds roads. Now that is a huge task, but it is one that's achievable. If you look at other cities in the world, Oslo have achieved this through a concerted effort over a number of years, and so it's the target we have to set ourselves, and we need to do all that work. And I think the Camera Partnership's one of the people that's going to help move us in that direction. But there's also national legislation in terms of vehicle safety and devices in vehicles, etc. There's lots of things can contribute to that. We're looking at a mode split targets that we've set ourselves, and these are very much based on that aim to shift people to bus, to rail, and to active modes for walking and cycling. But as you can see on the far side, that actually still leaves us with a significant number of the majority of people still private car journeys by 2030. So, you know, while there's that shift, it is going to make it an emphasis on shifting those people, but there's still, we acknowledge there's still going to be a significant amount of private car travel in the city in the future, and we'll have to accommodate, we need to accommodate that and work with that. Okay, Finn. I think in terms of the climate emergency, that's really been quite a lot of the focus of this strategy, in that we would probably have put a lot of these measures in already, and you would have thought, there we go, that's a really bold and ambitious strategy. But the scale of the challenge in terms of carbon emissions from transport is huge. It's already a third of the emissions in the city, and if we go on our current projections, we think we'd probably get to about a 17% reduction in CO2. If we really work hard, deliver the things that we've put in this strategy, including, you know, some changes in terms of national support, in terms of policies and funding to deliver that, you can probably get to a 43 to maybe 50% if, you know, the working from home effect from COVID really kicks in post pandemic. But that still leaves us with a gap. So throughout the strategy, we've offered some options of what else we could do to help us meet that gap, and really would welcome through this consultation members and you know, obviously your constituents' views on that. The key ones in that gap, and I think ones we would welcome comments on, are around workplace parking levy in the city centre, probably most likely. How can we fund public transport differently? What are the models of operation of that? Who owns the bus services? Who procures it? How does it work? And the competition. So that's one of the things we want to work with the combined authority on, how we can do that better. Looking at potentially a low carbon zone around, you know, very similar to the clean air zone that was proposed, but basing that on carbon emissions from vehicles, and so targeting those most polluting vehicles and encouraging a shift from those. And then there's more on sort of shared ownership models that we might do. Okay, Finn, move on. So in the pack that you got, we set out the 6 big moves or themes that we've got around transport, and this is going back to that vision of how can we, you know, there's no one answer to to improving transport in the city, we've got to look across a whole range of measures. And so we've set them out from how we can decarbonise transport, how we make the healthier streets and communities around individual places, you know, this concept of sort of 20-minute neighbourhoods and allowing people to live more locally, which requires sort of a planning and services that we deliver differently maybe as well. So it reduces the need to travel, but then also what are our streets need to be like, what's the streets and district centres need to be like to support the transportation and movement of people going forward. There's a whole chapter on the city centre and how, you know, clearly, you know, the importance of Leeds in terms of the city centre, in terms of the economics of the city region. Enhancing public transport, and I'm sure you've all got your views and get regular correspondence from people around the reliability and performance of the public transport services in the area. And this is really about how can we make the best of them, increase those numbers and get ourselves into a virtuous circle whereby more people are using it. Therefore, we've got more investment we can then recycle back into providing more services, more frequent services, better services or cheaper services, which then encourages more people. And then you get you know, that virtuous circle on that. New mobility solutions is very much about things like car clubs, bike share schemes, demand responsive transport, which is like minibuses that are a bit like Uber but run by the public transport authority to serve those journeys that aren't on main bus routes. And then finally the mass transit work that the combined authority are pursuing, and you may have seen that being published recently as well. So, you know, there's a whole raft of measures that we're looking to deliver. So that's the essence of the strategy, and there's a lot more detail in the document that when you read it. Okay, Finn. I think I've probably covered a number of these, but when we did the transport conversation in 2016, and you know, over 10,000 people responded to that, and in Outer West the feedback was, you know, as I've said, about walking and cycling routes, what we use the streets for, clearly a lot of issues around buses, and then the integrated ticketing as well. So we've got that in the strategy in terms of moving buses forward and how we pay for transport differently. So I think they were the things that were mentioned before, and I think the strategy does look at all of those and provides the options going forward. Okay, Finn. So I think I wanted to get comments from members, and I, you know, welcome. I will answer, you know, specific questions on points of detail in the areas, but really what we want to get from this is, do you agree with the visions and objectives in the draft strategy? Have we missed anything out? What more could we put in there? And then what we're going to do as part of the follow-up to this, and when we publish the final strategy, is look at developing an action plan of some of those measures that we can introduce in the first 1 or 2, 3 years of the strategy, with the funding that we've got, with the opportunities that we've got. And so understanding what your priorities are in Outer West would be really useful comments from members. Okay, Finn, is that it? Yeah, so just there's details in here about how people can carry on with the conversation. That's open till the 26th of March, and we're also doing a series of webinars that really good if you could promote or want to tune into them on each of the big moves. So we've done a couple of those, and they're available to view, and we'll be recording the ones that are going forward. So there's a number of topics. We've got experts from our expert panel and our partners who are helping to deliver in terms of transport. So for instance, the bus one, we've got representative from First Group coming to that, as well as experts from the Northeast who run buses there, and the combined authority. So I think that's probably my presentation. Thanks for the time to do that, Chair, and welcome your feedback and points to clarify.
Thank you, Paul. I've got a number of members wanting to ask questions or make comments on that. So I'll take you in order. David Blackburn first, please.
I think this is about the third time I've seen the same presentation, and I won't labour on points I've made elsewhere, but I'm actually introducing this to a meeting on Saturday night. This consultation, and I'm sure one question I'll be asked, and I don't know the answer myself, really, is to actually succeed in delivering this. A lot of the powers that are needed will be held by the new elected mayor. How much of this consultation is related into Wycombe? Because without that, we can't, certainly on public transport, we can't deliver.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Councillor Blackburn. This is very much, I think, part of the reason for this strategy is to set that Leeds vision to really be able to work with the partners, including the Combined Authority, the mayor, when elected, around what Leeds needs from them to help deliver. And when you look at the strategies that the connectivity strategy and the other work that we have at a West Yorkshire level, this is very much in line with that. We're going in the same direction in terms of what we're trying to achieve in Leeds and across West Yorkshire. So hopefully this just gives more weight and evidence towards ensuring that we do deliver on those shared objectives.
Thanks for that. The only other point I'm going to make, and then I'm going to leave it to everybody else so they can have their thing. But I have raised this before, but one of the great problems we have in our city when it comes to public transport is the public transport doesn't necessarily go where you want to go. And if you look at all our main bus routes, they all tend to be predominantly where the tram used to go when we had trams in 50s, and then we've added a bit on. The number 4 is the old number 11 tram. It went as far as the New Inn pub, and then when it became a bus route, gradually got sort of extended into Pudsey. 16 was to go to Bramley Town, to Hilltop as a tram, and then got extended to Bramley, and then on to Farsley, and then onto Pudsey. So we've got that. But like for instance, tomorrow I'm going for my COVID jab, and I'm going to somewhere in Pudsey. If I use public transport to get there, I've got to use 2 buses. If I didn't have my bus pass, the fact is the bus fare alone to Pudsey would be more than what it is to town, and Pudsey's nearer than town is from where I live. So somewhere who's nearby to where my locality is, and you could say the same as well if I were going to Armley. You can't connect with. There is no direct bus route that connects Farnley and Wortley, Pudsey and Carvely. In fact, there's no bus route. I think there's one, isn't there? There's an odd times a day one that goes through Carvely from centre of Pudsey. But the problem is we don't have that, and what we have is we have old tram routes that's been extended out, and they know where to join the spokes up. And that to me is the great problem with public transport city in this city, which is not always the case in every other city.
No, I totally agree. A sentiment that's expressed many times, and I think that's where within the strategy, working on things like the demand responsive transport on bus, some more orbital bus services that are very frequent, that do allow that 2 bus system, and then ticketing that allows that as well to happen, so that you pay for almost the distance you travel, or for the fact that you're doing a journey. It doesn't matter how many forms of transport you use to do that journey, you're paying 1 ticket for that. And that's what we've got to move towards, isn't it? And that's what this strategy is setting out, that's what we need. And we need to work with the Combined Authority, the bus operators, have the powers maybe through the mayor to achieve that.
Thank you. Simon Seary.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Couple of bits again. Park and ride. Obviously, the west of the city, we still without one. They're popping up, on the north, on the east of the city. So, when will, we get one at New Putty bus station, which would, New Putty train station, which would have massive benefits. Considering, the amount of traffic and people that come from Bradford, it'd be ideal just to drop off the ring road and they could catch the train or the bus straight into Leeds. We've gone on for some time about this. And then also the link from New Putty station to Pudsey itself, there is no direct bus route. So if we're trying to get more people onto the train to do longer journeys, they can't get to the train station from the centre of Pudsey with luggage or, with shopping. So 2 basic, simple things that would help massively in the west of the city. But we'd rather spend thousands and millions on, bus routes and things like that. But the basic of getting people to the start of their journey, we're not doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Trish?
Thanks, Chair. So, yet again, the bus is at the heart of everything. Where's our mass transit? If we're going to the bus model, where's our hub and spoke model? Yet again, I feel that the outer regions of our very fine city are being left. It's a very short-sighted model. I don't think it's positive for any of us in the outlying parts of the city. David's point about direct bus routes, Simon's mentioned we can't get to our railway station. What Simon didn't mention, and I know he's probably kicking himself because he would have had it on his tip of his tongue, is we've got a whole area of our ward that can get into Bradford far easier than they can get into Pudsey. What about Tysell? Again, it's not joined up. We've got residents in Tysell who have 2 different bus companies that service them, depending on the time of day. It's the route's now been dropped down to once an hour. The people are marooned. You want to get people out of cars, but you're actually not helping them to get out of cars. They're reliant on their car because if not, they're absolutely stuck in one spot and they can't move. I do think, it's a move forward, but it's not enough of a move forward. And the time and money and energy that's been spent to get us this far, it's not been well used, in my opinion. So I apologise that it's a little bit negative, but, I do think that we need to move forward and we need to move forward properly and joined up. Thank you.
If I may come back on those 2 points, Chair, I'll comment on both of those. I think I absolutely agree with that. In terms of New Pudsey, we are looking with the Combined Authority around car park expansion at the station. So, addressing that park and ride, we see that as a priority and looking to do that. The whole point around bus deregulation and what powers we have to influence where buses go, how often they run, the frequencies, etc., is where the restrictions are. The funding that we often get is capital funding for infrastructure projects, not revenue funding to support services. So we can't, there's a limited amount that the Combined Authority have in terms of services that they can subsidise. So they're the barriers. They're the barriers to achieving that, and that's what we want to highlight, is how strongly everyone feels about this, how important it is to us as a city that we have a better public transport system in terms of buses and how they work, and therefore to do that we need to have a system where we either put more funding into them through sort of revenue support, or we make sure that there are opportunities to to do it differently. But it needs to be done, it needs to be changed, and that's what this strategy is trying to set out. So I think we very much agree that the current system is not right and we need to improve it.
Okay, thank you. Anne Forsyth.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Paul, for coming to present this to us. I've got quite a few points and some questions within it, so I'll be reasonably brief. In the report, you talk about having consulted already with seldom heard groups, and I'm wondering sort of how you've done that or plan to do that, and also what about children? How are they being given any sort of way of specifically being able to feed any comments in? excellent, the idea of living in a city where we don't need to use a car, but there's only a 30% reduction actually planned here. And can I just say that with electric cars, okay, from the carbon neutral point of view, that's one thing. That doesn't reduce the particulates. You've still got a real problem from the brakes and the tyres, and from congestion. Doesn't solve that problem either, and therefore also the safety aspects. Just one other little thing I've said in a different context as well. I don't see any sort of forward thinking about the huge increase in home deliveries and the vans, and so much of what is on the road is actually delivery vans now, many of whom which aren't electric. So we've all changed our behaviour in the last year. Behaviour change is possible when there is an emergency. I just would like to have seen some sort of cashing in, if you like, on that behaviour change, because actually the idea that roads are just used for cars to be on this is going to be a change in mindset really too. Can I just absolutely confirm the closing date for consultation is the 26th of March? Because I've heard 4th of March in a different context. I don't know, perhaps I picked it up wrongly. Definitely the 26th, that's fine.
It is the 26th, yeah.
Yeah, and my last thing is your graphs don't show us getting anywhere near getting to zero carbon by 2030. Thanks. Sorry if I'm negative in places.
No, thank you. I think Finn might have some of the details of how the seldom heard groups and the children's representatives. We've arranged a number of ways of communicating with them. Have you got that detail, Finn?
I've got a bit of detail to hand. So we're going to be attending the Access and Usability Group, Leeds Blind Federation, the Deaf Federation, amongst other groups as well. There's obviously always more that we can do around there. So if any of the councillors are aware of any other seldom held groups, please let us know, and we're more than happy to arrange a session with them. In terms of the youth voice, we've got a workshop set up in a fortnight's time with the Leeds Youth Council. I think there's over 450 youth councils across the city. So we're hoping for a big turnout there to get their voice heard into the strategy consultation.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think that point around it's still not enough is again why we've set this strategy as a draft, and we've asked those questions around what more can we do, what more should we do, because we do need that support and buy-in. I think the difference between behaviour change in a pandemic and behaviour change with transport for over the next 10 years is how much is that going to be enforced, how much can that be enforced, and how much does it need to be personal choice. And I think that's where there's probably a key difference. But yes, we do need to look at where people have changed behaviours and make sure that the people who've been going out in their local neighbourhoods, shopping at their local shops more than they did before, appreciate that and continue doing it into the future.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Blackburn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, in this, being a green, a lot of the problem caused by vehicles on the road. Ideally, we prefer less vehicles on the road. And the sort of tendency towards cars. I know this is a separate thing, but it is related. I think that all 99 councillors should set an example, and maybe we could get some publicity by saying we're setting an example, but not. We should actually, all of us should want to reduce the usage of the car, if we have one. I don't have one, but you know, most councillors do. But I find that when I've been to meetings to do with transport, definitely most of the councillors say, you know, seem to want to, well, most of the councillors basically want to keep their car, and I'd say unless some of them just have got so used to it that if you don't have a bus stop within 2 minutes walking, that it's just, oh yes, I need to use my car. So I think all councillors should maybe show an example there. But as far as this document goes about where buses should go, I think once you go into that, the more the specifics, of course, everybody will want buses that take them where they want to go, no matter where you live. And what concerns me is, as things, it's different bus companies at the moment, but it probably won't continue like that. And I think we need to just obviously speak up for our wards when it comes to who gets what there. But it does concern me that a lot of us speak about reducing, about zero carbon emissions and that. Yes, I think everybody would, well, I don't know, but certainly we need to do that. But that means all of us, not just some of us. And it doesn't seem to be going that way. So one can find things down on paper, but at the end of the day, it needs people to work with this. Now, as far as you say about wanting people's comments, again, I see here we're talking about webinars and whatever. I need to point out that a lot of people in my ward do not have computers, and unlike what it says further on in the document, booking appointments, in our ward we don't have a hub where we can book appointments. It means them going to Armley or Pudsey, which they have to book. So all people you will be getting will be people that have computer access. So in a way, the consultation's unfair. What I would ask is, could adverts be put up at the local shopping centres, so that at least we might catch a few more people there. In my ward, you could put them, someone put the entry to the Asda, and certainly we can put stuff up in small shops if you give us a poster. I just really feel though we're not getting to everybody. The people that will be answering you will be these people with cars that just want a bus to, you know, that are talking as a car user. And maybe we know with older people, well, not necessarily older people, people with walking problems, etc., and the elderly. Yes, we've got a lot to do, but we've got to let people know this is happening. And I can say full well that after this happens, as it stands at the moment, some people will be saying, well, I didn't know about it. So can we just look at that and see if we can publicise it a bit more to the people that don't have access the computers, please. Sorry about going on a bit, but I feel that had to be said. Thank you.
Thank you,
No, thanks, Councillor Blackburn. They're useful comments. I think that is right. Under normal circumstances, we would do a lot more work in, going out to within the communities and trying to do this. But obviously, we are restricted a little bit by the pandemic. But we can see what can be done in terms of advertising out to in areas.
Before I bring in Peter Carlisle, I just want to add on to what Anne is saying about reaching people, because most people won't even know about the consultation. And why should they bother anyway? Because nobody listened when they commented about the cycle lane that goes through our ward. Not because they're against cycle lanes. Most people aren't. We want more people to cycle to work, to use cycle lanes. But that particular cycle lane has caused congestion, it's caused pollution, it's dangerous. We had to fight like fury to get extra crossings there. It's absolute chaos down at Starlingley Bottom. It simply doesn't work, and nobody would listen. They wouldn't listen to us, and they wouldn't listen to constituents. So, why should they bother being consulted about this? Because they'll think, well, nobody's going to listen again. The other thing is that I just wanted to touch on again, and I know I've brought this up before. Sometimes disabled people are disregarded in transport strategies, and I know that you have mentioned it, Paul, but I have got 2 points in my ward which is absolutely dangerous for disabled people. When the cycle lane was put in at Thornbury Barracks, it wasn't made wide enough. The pedestrian passageway wasn't made wide enough for a wheelchair. So wheelchairs now have to go onto the highway, which is extremely dangerous to get anywhere at all. It's just not fair and not right. I don't expect you to comment about that, but I would like to take those comments on board about the disabled people. So can I bring in Peter Carlisle now, please?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think my comments on the wider strategy Paul's had many times, so I'll just focus on the couple of local bits. I think it's completely right about the consultation with everyone, because it obviously sets a key driver at the beginning of this, that it's for everyone to be able to access opportunities, and if anyone is struggling, then that's a real difficulty that we have. Talking about our area, I mean, the one thing is really that in order for people to make a shift out of cars, they've got to have real alternatives for the actual journeys they make day to day. In a ward like Carverley and Farsley, we've obviously got a number of somewhat isolated centres that there are many difficulties of getting between if you're not in a private car. So if you're walking, that's difficulties of the ring road, crossing between Carverley to Farsley, getting between Rodley and Carverley. We've obviously got the A647, which we've talked of, separating some of the communities there, and getting across Dawson's Corner is a difficult one as well. So I think there are many difficulties there for walking in these further out communities. We therefore need some alternatives. So obviously mass transit, I mean, if we started now, we're not going to see anything delivered until late 2030s, early 2040s, are we? So that's not going to be something that solves the problem right in front of us. And in terms of rail, well, obviously we've only got the one station near our particular area, so all that's going to take you to is Bramley or the city centre, and there's a real difficulty with capacity on those lines and in the major stations. That the growth there is incredibly difficult. So then we're sort of left with bus being the major alternative that people can take. And we're kind of at the odd situation at the moment where the local authority and the transport authority are putting funding in, the government are putting emergency funding into buses, so a large amount of the funding is coming from the public, but it seems the people who have the least say in where these routes are going is the public themselves, either through their elected representatives like us or through individual comments. I mean, in our area, to get to the local issues, I mean, as we saw routes removed due to social distancing and there being a lack of buses, it was no surprise to me that one of the first routes cut was the number 35, which serves Rodley and Carverley in our ward, and it's already an area with with limited bus routes. So we're stuck in a position where the routes that we seem to be seeing kept on, David mentioned some earlier, the 16, which is an incredibly profitable route, but if you want to go from Farsley to the city centre, will take you an hour on that one round the houses. Now it's perfect if you want to go to Bramley Shopping Centre, but if you do want to go to the city centre, it's possible to get there in your car in 20 minutes, and that's something that I know needs looking at. And I speak to people all the time, really, who would use the bus if it was reliable, frequent, and went where they want to go. But we do have that situation where getting a bus to New Pudsey train station from many of the areas is just not possible. Getting a bus to Pudsey town, people's nearest town, is just not possible. So we end up with points where, say you're in Carverley, it's easier to get a bus to Kirkstall or to the city centre than it is to nip into Pudsey to go to the pharmacy or to Bradford Centre, say. So you've got people going 3 times as far as they need to be to make an easy journey. So I think we're already in a bit of a sticky situation over buses. I think that's definitely a conversation that needs to come out of this around how buses are operated to make sure that they're operated for the people of Leeds. But if we're in the current situation where routes are actually being removed from those areas that already have not the capability of bus that we'd like to see, then really we're stepping backwards at the moment, and that's something we really need to get into a better position with. And some of that is due to really some of the operators that are operating the buses. We've obviously got 2 going through our ward, and you see differences on the routes from those, but a lot of that is just down to really who's making the decisions for which routes go and how and why those routes are run. And I think that needs to be tied in with this strategy in order for it to really make a difference to the amount of people that it needs to.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Carl. I think the one I probably give an example to sort of I think the sort of the connections to New Pudsey and how would we solve that if we had the ability to deliver a different solution for that. So if we set up a demand responsive transport service in the area, that would be, and because actually there's probably not enough people to go from everywhere to everywhere using a double-decker bus. It's not the most efficient system to transport 2 people on a bus at any one time. That's not going to be efficient for anyone. But if that bus is, rather than being on a fixed route, is on a demand responsive thing, so you would call or you would press the button on your app and you'd say, right, okay, I live in the Waterloo area of Pudsey and I want to go to New Pudsey station to pick up this train, so that bus would pick you up and take you there as part of your integrated ticket. That's what you'd have. But obviously there probably wouldn't be enough people doing that one journey. Exactly, it's a bit like that service. But some people at the same time will want to go somewhere on that route to Alcoats, won't they? And so they can get picked up and taken there at the same time. And then when it gets to Alcoats, there'll probably be 3 or 4 people there who want to go back down to Rodley, and they take them there. So having a system there that gives you public transport options for everyone is what we probably need to work at. And when you look at the cost of running services, a double-decker bus for a year probably costs in the region of £150,000 a year to run. That's the operating cost for it. So you need to get that return on that. But a minibus would be much less. And how can we then get that working? How many would you have? What would the response times need to be? So there's an example of this that Arriva bus company have introduced in Liverpool, and it's been hugely successful, called Arriva Click. So I think if members looked at that and understood what that type of service is and how that can transform what you've got in terms of a public transport offer and very much for areas where, like Outer West, where you've got a multitude of district centres, key places people want to go that are not easily lined up on one route. As Councillor Carla said, the 16 is not a viable route in terms of connecting up all the places you'd want you know, and even if it did, it'd take a long time to get round any loop. So I think that's what we're talking about when we talk about demand responsive transport. It's a huge, I think it can be a huge breakthrough in terms of transport, and we've got to find ways to do it. We have got some funding through the combined authority to do that in East Leeds as a trial. I'm hoping therefore that will be, you know, a success, and therefore we can roll it out across the rest of the city and people can see the difference that sort of service can make to people. And all the things that you have, you know, if you start looking at bike shares, if you start looking at e-bikes that can do some of those distances, for certain people can do it. Not everyone's going to do that, but it does take the hill out of the journey for people. You know, there's a number of solutions that we can have for those inter-ward journeys that people are making at the moment. And once you take them away, and the commute is solved by either mass transit, rail, etc., then you've got to think about what are the other journeys that you are making as individuals that rely on you needing a car, and can you maybe, you know, if you're a 2-car household, can you give one of those up? And that's what we're trying to make, that evolution towards reducing car ownership, and therefore there'll be more people who want to use these alternative modes, or use the bus more often, will use demand responsive transport, will walk and cycle those short journeys because that's the easiest and best option, for the most economical option for them. Sorry, that was quite a long answer to that question, but I think it hopefully it shows what we want to try and achieve, and that you're not going to just do it with the existing bus routes.
Thank you, Councillor Andrew Carter, and then if no one else has got anything pressing, we'll move on to the next item because time's moving on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll be as quick as I can. A fairly depressing discussion, really. We seem to be going around a never-ending and possibly vicious circles. I don't envy Paul his job. Trish Smith made the point about nothing is joined up, and she's absolutely right. For this to work in any way, shape or form, first of all, the predictions have to be based on fact. And I wonder when the predictions were prepared, because certainly up to very recently, the predictions of what could be achieved and what the targets were based on pre-COVID mobility. And that has changed things dramatically, and in my view, will have some lasting, possibly helpful impacts as yet to be determined. Secondly, why is it when they're trying these possibly useful new trials out, it's always East Leeds or South Leeds, but never West Leeds? Our communities are, and I think we can all agree on this, pretty isolated in terms of bus services. The bus services, for whatever reason, are inadequate. But currently, they are pretty much underused anyway, and we know that the bus companies are wholly dependent on being bailed out by the government to stop them going out of business altogether, which would be a dreadful situation. But when we talk about things being joined up, I want to give you an example of something. A few years ago, plans were passed for over 500 houses at a place called Carvley Vale. Now, it used to be an industrial site. And as part of the planning gain, the council insisted on a minibus service, which the developer would fund for 25 years and would run from that site to Horsforth. I asked that they considered a circular route that would go from the site to Horsforth, back down the ring road to Rodley, into Farsley, up to Pudsey, the new Pudsey station possibly, into Carvley and back to Horsforth Vale. Oh no, we can't ask them to do that. So what we've got is a useless service for 25 years where the poor fellows who drive this small bus sit in permanent isolation, because I've yet to see more than one person on this bus, when we could have had a circular route, let's say for only 5 years, to limit the cost on the developer. But my contention would have been that within the 5 years, you would have a very, very significant uplift in the number of people using it. It would have connected all those communities by way of a hopper bus, and the potential passenger numbers would have grown from 1,000 to 40,000. But no, because the planners didn't want to push it, the Highways Department had no input, and now we are where we are. We have lost opportunities over and over again. Added to all that now, we've got the added issue of employment, and what's on the majority of people's lips now is fear about their livelihoods post-pandemic. And if we do anything in this strategy which doesn't have built in the need to safeguard, protect, and increase employment opportunities, we will never get buy-in, because that will be the number one concern of people in the months and possibly years to come, when we finally see the complete effects of the COVID pandemic. And I suppose the key, that was just to highlight the one missed opportunity. There've been many over the years. Another one would have been the reopening of Carvely and Rodley Station with a park and ride, and that could be done still. But the council went and sold a piece of land there, ideal for a park and ride, to a wood yard, which was an example of forward thinking if ever there was one. But at the end of the day, if these statistics that you brought forward in this paper are related to a pre-COVID time, then you're going to make all your predictions based on an assumption which is going to be proved to be absolutely incorrect. And I would like an answer on that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Carter. I think that's an important point. I do agree with you about the planning, and that's something that we do need to have a greater influence in, and not, repeat those mistakes. I think there's an opportunity there to maybe, if we did get a demand responsive transport system, to replace that Claremont bus with that, get some of that funding and repurpose it for that. Anyway, so at the moment, or pre-COVID, 16% of all of journeys were commuting. Only 16% of all journeys are commuting. Clearly, that is across all sectors of work. A lot of those are still going to require people to travel to their place of work. If you work in hospitals, if you work in hospitality, if you work in retail, you still have to go there. So the reduction in travel from working from home of office-based workers will be relatively small compared to that overall total journeys. So I think that's it. That so we will need to revisit these figures based on sort of, as we know more and more about the return to post pandemic, but it's not, I think, the wholesale change that maybe you articulated. So I think that's an important point around the percentage that commuting makes up and how that's offices. And I absolutely take your point around the importance of the economy, but one of the drivers of economic regeneration in cities is an efficient transport system. Not, so I think, investment in our strategy to deliver these things, both in terms of the construction jobs in delivering it, but also in terms of the employment doing it, and the efficiency of travel within the city, will allow businesses and people to travel easier and help the economy. So I think there's a positive effect of implementing this strategy in terms of the economy. So I hope that answers your points. You don't always agree with me, but I think some of those stats will be slightly revised, but I still think we've got to go in the same direction. The point around the reductions at the moment that we've seen in rail and public transport use during the pandemic has set us an even harder challenge than we had before. But we've got to go that way. If we're going to meet our climate emergency targets, if we're going to have a system that's inclusive for all and that helps with reducing particulate emissions and road safety, we've got to do this mode shift. I think we can all be in agreement with that. We will differ on how we get there, but we're all working towards that end goal.
Thank you very much, Paul. There are no more hands up. So thank you for your input into that.
Welcome any written responses from members directly, and if you could really encourage people to fill in the questionnaires and responses. We've got about 700 so far, but really we want to push that up and get a much higher representative sample of the city so that we can have confidence that we've gathered enough views. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, can we go to item 10, please? Finance update.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, councillors. So the finance report for today, February 2021, as usual, includes the following. We've got an update on the budget positions for each of the current 2020 to 21 funding pots, so this financial year. We've got an update on the projects that have been funded by the committee for this financial year. We'll also have an update on the original COVID-19 ring-fenced budgets that were ring-fenced last March, as well as an update on the new central government COVID-19 budgets that were recently received by the committee. So beginning with the budget overviews then. On paragraph 16 on page 3, this just asks the committee to note that since the previous committee in November, there have been 6 projects that were passed by DDN decision. These are listed as the Christmas Carol Playhouse visits, the Outer West Youth Drama Workshops, Breeze Kids Activity Boxes, Pudsey Bins ×6, Carvely and Farsley SIDS and Connectors, and the additional gardener resources for this current year. So taking into account these updates, the next section will provide a summarised overview of the current budget position for each pot. So if I could draw you to paragraph 18 to 21, which is pages 3 and 4. This asks the committee to note that from the initial wellbeing budget of £129,328.06, the committee has today allocated a total of £106,303.04, leaving a wellbeing balance of £23,025.02. And then table 1, which is on page 4, provides the committee with a breakdown of this allocation, as well as an update on some of those projects also. So I'll just go through these as quickly as I can. The first section is the ring fence projects. So these are all currently ongoing: the small grants and skips, community engagement, the CCTV, the original COVID funds, and the site-based gardener, which was recently approved, which will be ongoing until May. And then in terms of approved projects, just scrolling down onto page 5, the first 4 are all of the Christmas lights, all of which now are fully complete. And also the Friends of Farsley Rehoboth burial ground, that's also complete. Leeds Money Buddies is one of the projects that has not been able to start because of COVID. So it is going to be one of the projects which is closed down and money returned. The Moravian Museum Full Neck Settlement Information Panel is currently ongoing. The dates have shifted slightly, but they'll be completed by July. The Tyersall Youth Club CCTV, I've spoken to the electricians recently, and they're going to have that work completed in the next few weeks, hopefully. Pudsey House Electric Equipment is complete. Pudsey Money Buddies obviously is in the same position as the other Money Buddies project, as a non-starter. New Farnley and Bloom is complete. The Hawthorne Community Allotment Garden is ongoing at the minute and will conclude at the end of March. And the summer bans for 2021-22 are obviously scheduled in for summer 21. I've had provisional dates received from Alison starting in May running through to the end of August. So from that list, we've just got the 2 Leeds Money Buddies projects, which have been non-starters. And as per the agreement from the recent Chairs Forum, these projects will be closed down and the applicant will be invited to reapply in the next financial year when they're in a position to proceed with their offering. So that will return just over £9,000 to the wellbeing pot. Okay, moving on to the youth funding, the AF funding. Paragraphs 24 to 26, which is on page 5, asked the committee to note that from an original budget of £43,063.44, the committee has today allocated £36,779.50, leaving a current remaining balance of £6,283.94. And similarly, we've got table 2, which is on page 6, which shows a breakdown of this allocation and provides an update. So again, I'll just run through these. Andy's Youth Project and the Pudsey Youth Cafe are both projects that have not been able to begin. So they will be closed down and asked to reapply next year. Farmland Football Project is complete. The Youth Summit, which I'll speak more about a little bit later on when we do the update report, as we know, hasn't been able to proceed recently. So again, that will return to the pot. 20 years of Dazzle, that's ongoing currently. There may be an underspend on this project due to them not having venue hire costs, but that will be running up to the end of March. The Farmland Youth Service, again, is another one that has not been able to start. As with the Woodall Scouts group, they've not been able to run any activity. Mini Breeze in the Park, as we know, is complete, as is the Mini Summer Sports project. Breeze Friday Night project. In fact, the next 4, the Outer West Activity Programme, the Christmas Carol, theatre visits, and the drama workshops are all projects that have not been able to begin because of COVID. And then finally, we have the Breeze Kids Christmas activity boxes, which were funded recently, and they completed in December with activity boxes delivered. So from this list, we've just got the 4 youth service projects, the Pudsey Wellbeing Charity, the Outer West Activity Programme, the Friday Night Project, the Youth Summit, and the Woodhall Scouts group, which are the projects that are going to be closed down and money returned to the AF budget, which would add in another £17,500 to that budget. The next section of the report just covers off some monitoring that we've received recently. So if I can bring your attention to paragraph 29, which is on page 7. The name of the project on this occasion is the Friends of Farsley Rehoboth Burial Ground. The project completed the landscaping of a section of land within the Farsley Rehoboth Burial Ground, developing a memorial garden for the benefit of the public. There were 68 work sessions that were completed with over 700 participants, volunteers and students contributing to the result. The finished product includes wooden planters, a seating area and protective trees and wildlife. And it provides a quiet contemplation space for reflection and positive well-being in an outdoor green space, and is fully wheelchair accessible. The benefits to the community are listed as providing opportunities for learning and developing new skills. It brought together local groups and encouraged social interaction in a COVID-safe manner. It supported young people to become engaged and interested in their local community. And it developed and maintained an accessible community space that can be enjoyed by everyone. And we've just included a couple of photos on page 8 as well for reference. The next section of the finance report is the small grants and skips, which is paragraph 34, which is also on page 8, which asks the committee to note that the current remaining small grants and skips balance, we've had 3 skip requests funded and 1 small grant project approved, which is leaving a remaining balance of £4,044.48. Table 3 just lists those projects. Chair, I have very recently received just 2 small grant applications from the Pudsey councillors, if the committee is happy to hear them now whilst we're discussing small grants.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that okay? Thank you. So the first request is just for £150, and this is for the purchase of 200 Hessian sandbags, which is to bag up sand from the recent floods in Troydale, and it'll be used to help stop the Beck from breaching its banks, which would benefit both Pudsey and Farnley and Wortley Ward. So again, that's just £150 from the small grants fund.
That's fine.
Everybody happy with that? David?
I'm happy with that. Are we actually creating sandbags, or is it this some sand we've already got and they're putting into Hessian bags?
Chair, so we were donated 2 pallets of sandbags from a local builders merchant, right, and these are just the Hessian sacks to transfer it into, so we can keep it for longer.
Because what I will say is our experience of the evening you're talking about was that most of our residents finished up actually going out and buying their own sandbags because there were none available. And clearly we have a problem in Troydale, just as we have down Ring Road, because it's the same piece of water. And while it generally doesn't affect many houses, we have a similar problem on Gelderd Road near Traveller's Site, which is in our ward. I mean, I don't know how we do this, but could we think about actually having our own stock of sandbags? I'm not saying make a decision now, but just an idea.
Yeah, so we know we can pick up offline, not a problem. I'll happy.
Okay, any more comments?
Okay.
Everybody happy with that? Okay, carry on, Mike.
Okay, great, thank you. And the second request was for £130 from the Pudsey councillors, and this is for the purchase of 3 time capsules, which would the local community would be encouraged to send in memorabilia such as letters, stories, photos relating to the experience in the last year, as a way of building community spirit and support emotional well-being. So that'll be 3 time capsules for the Pudsey ward at £130.
Yeah, interesting that, Pudsey ward councillors, because we've just received one in Carvely and Farsley for a very similar project. So we'll be applying as well. Is everybody happy with that? Any comments?
I think you better make it 9, Mike.
We'll have to check stock on that then, won't we?
Yeah.
Well, not from our funds.
Yeah, I think
that's very generous of you.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, fine. Can I just suggest that we, in view of the fact we're likely to be perhaps not quite as financially flexible in the next financial year, can I suggest that we proactively contact the allotments people who've had skips before and see if they want them this spring? I raised this issue, I think, at the last meeting, or the last meeting but one, about whether the council were now prepared to send these skips out and allow them to be on site for a week. They at one stage were saying you could only have these skips if you filled them the day they arrived, and they were taken away the following day to stop people bringing all sorts of stuff. But I mean, that's never been a problem before. And I guess people will want to get out on the allotments in the next few weeks. And we've a number of allotments besides the 2 mentioned here, Crimbles and Gatescroft. And I wonder if we should be proactively contacting them via Parks and Countryside. I mean, we've got the allotments at Brookfield in Rodley. There's allotments on the Ring Road in Farsley. And it just seems a pity if we can let them have skips to get rid of all the stuff we can then send for composting. We don't do it.
I think that's a good idea, personally. David, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. I support that. As I said, I think what we should be doing, it should be auto allotments at sites, because as I said, the fact is because of how we've been, and maybe people not being able to get on the allotments, there may well be more material. So obviously some of the allotment holders allotments will not have not skips in the past, and I think it's important they all have opportunity and be encouraged to take it up.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think we should proactively go after that.
Sounds like we're getting an agreement on that. Anne Blackburn, do you want to come in?
Yes, please, Chair. In fact, I was going to say what David's already said, but I will say that that basically in our ward we haven't had anybody asking for a skip for ages, and it has previously been allotment. I don't know, sometimes housing, but basically it's allotments. But of course, the thing is, certainly at the moment, that some people, because the government's saying that you should stop in and not go out, and a lot of the people in our ward that have allotments are elderly. That I don't know that they are on the allotments as much as they normally would be. I accept that now we're getting the better weather, you tend to get more people on allotments then. But yes, I'm in favour of getting in touch with all the allotment groups in all 3 wards, because all these skips here are going to the other 2 wards, and so I would like them to make sure that they ask our allotments just chance to do one more. You know, if that helps them to do to get on and get out in the garden or get out in the allotment when they can, bearing in mind COVID restrictions. Yes, so please do ask all the 3 wards, and it might be an idea in future, I think, when we're talking about skips, to ask all the allotments in all 3 wards if they want them. Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you very much. Right, can you go do that, Mike? That would be excellent.
No problem. I'll pick up on that. I'll check the latest guidance to see what we can offer, and then I'll speak to Parks and Countryside to get a list, and then I'll get in touch with them.
Thank you. Do you want to carry on?
No problem. Yeah, lovely. So the next section is the capital budget. So paragraph 35 on page 9. The capital budget is unchanged since the last committee meeting in November, but obviously the table's included for clarity. So Carvley and Farsley with £9,455.66, Farnley and Wortley with £10,390.66, and Pudsey with £5,291.68. A total for the area of 25,138. And then below that, I've just included a table with an update on all the recent capital projects funded. And as we can see, that they're all complete for this financial year. All the SIDs, bins, notice boards are all, and benches, they're all in place now. So moving on, we come to the Sill budget, which is paragraph 37 on page 9. Table 4 provides the committee with an updated total capital balance and a breakdown for each ward. So we can see in the table that we've got Carvley and Farsley with a remaining budget of £13,747.79, Farnley and Wortley with a remaining budget of £19,194.08, and Pudsey with £83,797.30, and leaving a total balance of £116,739.17. And similarly, I've included a table just to update you on the recent Sill projects. And as the table shows, we've just got 2 Sill projects that are currently still open. The first one is the Claremont Grove CCTV cameras, which I know, speaking regularly to Sophie in housing, that she's pushing Leeds Building Services for a date of completion. She had told me a few weeks ago it was going to be done in the next few weeks, but I think they've had a lot of setbacks. But she's assured me that she's pushing them as hard as she can, and will let me know as soon as it's going to be installed. And then the other project is the Carvely and Farsley SIDS and Connections, which is a newer project that's been approved, and Highways have confirmed that completion will be done by April on that project. Next then is COVID-19 updates. So we'll move on to the remaining COVID-19 budgets per ward as set aside for the pandemic. We'll start with the original ring-fenced funds, which is table 8 on page 11. So these again are unchanged since the last meeting, because we've been focusing on the new budgets that have been allocated to the committee. But just to quickly recap, Carvely and Farsley with 3,500, Farnley and Wortley with 2,500, and Pudsey with 2,200, leaving a total of 8,200 for the committee. And then that brings us nicely.
Sorry, can I just put in there, Chair?
Sorry, Councillor.
This first lot of COVID money,
yes,
isn't going to be reclaimed, is it? Because it came out of our original budget. It was just ring fenced.
Correct. So you ring fenced it from your wellbeing budget.
Right. So we don't have to worry about any underspend there that we may want to spend in the next financial year, in the aftermath of COVID.
That's right. So the new central government COVID funding, this is the budget where we've been given the deadline of the end of March to spend the money.
Okay.
So table 9 on page 12. So this is at the time of the report was published on Monday the 8th. The balances were as shown in the table. So Pudsey with a remaining balance of 4,702, Carvely and Farsley with the remaining balance of 9,000, and Farnley and Wortley with a remaining balance of 9,000. Since that report in the last week, we have approved another 2 further COVID grants from this pot. The first being the Computers for Kids project, this time for Carvely and Farsley, of just over £1,000, which means Carvely and Farsley's new remaining budget is now 7,896. And the second being the Youth Service Activity Bags for Pudsey, which was £500, meaning that Pudsey's new budget is 4,202. So apologies that figures are slightly out of date though there, but things are moving so quickly, so it's understandable.
Sorry, Mike, Chair, if I may come in again on that. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yes, I wonder if Simon is able to update us on the Computers for Kids. I think it runs in my mind we need to allocate some more from Carvely and Farsley. Can you give us an update on where we're at?
Yeah, not a problem. I spoke to Stephen yesterday afternoon. He's inundated with equipment, but he's dealing with a number of projects across the city, because obviously the council have taken the idea on as well. So he's getting equipment from the high value waste recycling from the council, Kite Academy, they're involved, and West Leeds Academy as well. But he is separating the equipment out. He is still distributing and doing the equipment, but volume wise, the cost wise, you're probably talking there'll be £1,000 between each ward at the most. A lot of this equipment, some of the equipment that he gets in, he can recycle as well, which will cover the costs. So I think the scheme will be able to keep running for ongoing, but it should be able to manage its own costs as well, which is really good.
But the problem we've got is that on March the 31st, this second tranche of money will vanish anything that's left. So,
Yes, so-
if we, for example, Carvely and Farsley Ward, if we were to put aside another £2,000, we then have to account for the balance before the end of March. And I want to float a suggestion. Although Amanda, you might want to, because you were the one who was approached. But the members will have heard of natter benches, certainly in Pudsey Ward. These are extended public seats which allow people to social distance and sit at either end and talk to each other, particularly helpful for older people. We have an offer in Carvely to meet part of the cost of one, because somebody who passed away, and in order to make the bench that they are prepared to pay for, a natter bench, would cost us an extra £1,200, Amanda, am I right?
I think it's £1,300.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. It might be another extra £1,000 for fitting it. Can you clarify that, Mike?
So the cost I got from Guy Smithson, which was to supply and fit a 2.5 metre Eastgate 2020 natter bench, creating a suitable base, bolting it down with a standalone sign. He said we were looking at around £2,000.
Yeah.
Can I point on that, Chair, please?
Yeah.
I dealt with Guy last week about our 2 benches, because we're having 2. And the bench is round about £1,000 for the bench itself. And depending where you want it fitting, depending on the cost. So one of our benches is going in Pudsey Park, and he has to just put 2 plinths in, which is £300. And the other one needs a full base, which is going to cost £700. So depending where you want to put it, if you talk to Guy, it depends on how much it will cost for each bench. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he's told us. Well, I'd like to suggest that then I've asked Peter to come in. We don't want to get stuck with this money and have it taken off us. So I would suggest that we put one in Farsley West Royd Park and put it in the Memorial Garden, which is near where the band plays, and the one in Carvely Park, which we will have a contribution towards anyway. So I guess we'd be looking then at in the order of £3,300.
Okay, I'll speak to Guy Smithson.
Well, if we're going to move ahead, we need to move quickly, or we won't get them at all, and the money will be away.
I think
from what my colleague in Horsforth tells me, they are very popular, particularly with elderly people and young mums with kids in prams, to be able to talk to somebody else at a distance.
Well, I will pick up that conversation this week. I think if we can show by the end of March that we've allocated the money to a project, that's fine, rather than having to actually had it spent by that date. So as long as we can have committed the money to that project, then we're okay. But I'll pick up the conversation with Guy with those locations and just ask him to confirm what the costs will be, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you. David, you've had your hand up for a while. Do you want to come in now, or do you want to wait until Mike's finished?
Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Blackburn.
It's not working always when I press it. The thing is, I am not. Can somebody enlighten me how much we're expecting from my ward out of our allocation towards these computers? Because I mean, quite clearly, as Councillor Carter said, we don't want to get to the end of March and not spend it. We need to get it spent.
Yeah, so we've only had one request from one school at the moment, and I think I can't remember off the top of my head where it's in email. So yeah, so I think it was it 10 or 5 devices at roughly £20 each, so that'll be the maximum. But obviously we've equipment's drying up out there. You know what I mean? A lot of people are already done it, so they're just working through the plan.
Right, so I need to get some of that. We need to get some of that spent.
Yeah.
Well, I think what might be a good idea is at the start of March, when we're kind of a month away from the deadline, I'll have a review of what the budgets are, and if we need to just put our heads together and have an informal chat and plot what we want to do with that money, that might be a good option as well, just so that we're not letting it slip.
I think we should definitely put that in the diary before the financial year ends.
Yeah, I think early March.
Yeah, so if you could arrange that, Mike.
Of course, no problem.
Anne, do you want to come in now?
Yes, please, Chair. Relating to the computers that I think that we mentioned before for school children. One thing that we wanted to know, and I did actually send an email asking about this. I'm sorry, I'm a bit croaky. Is about actually the children that don't have computer access at home. Now, I know it was touched on when this idea was first mooted, because as much as, yes, it's a good idea to let children have computers at home that need them for educational purposes, but they can only do that if their home is connected up with broadband. If it isn't, and this is what concerns me, these are the children that will miss out, because how can we get them connected up? I think some idea was mentioned somewhere. This is what I have been asking about, you know, when the councillor that suggested this. I've sent emails and I don't get replies, because we, as far as we're concerned, yes, getting youngsters computers that need them is obviously what I think we'd all want to do. But, well, yes, it is what we all want to do. But we're concerned about if they're not on broadband supply, there's no point in them having a computer, is it? So the problem in my ward, and you know, perhaps other wards as well, is that it's those, as I said, it's those youngsters that's going to miss out. So how do we go about doing that? And I did ask the question, I've asked it twice, and I've had no response from the councillor concerned. So we do need that. We don't need to know that, because you know, it's
Afternoon, Andy. I did send you an email with the links. Obviously, the government are supporting children without access, and plus many of the suppliers are offering free internet. And I sent you the links in an email, so I'll find the email and forward it on if you've missed it. But yeah, it was, the schools have a responsibility to make sure the children can access, and this was just an additional top up to help the schools. They would manage the whole process, but you know, the government have backed that up, and there was a programme in there.
Right, yes, so it's a bit more involved when we're talking about yes, we're talking about individual schools, which admittedly the schools the schools will need to know, well, they will know which of children need these computers. But
well, the schools are actually organising it, Anne. So they know where the children are, and they, as Simon says, they've got a responsibility to ensure that each child can access the internet, and it's backed up by the government. So I think that's your answer, really. They are addressing that. And I certainly haven't had any complaints from schools in my ward about children who have not been able to access it. And I know a number of them don't have broadband at home. So I think that is being sorted out. If you've got any issues that you know of in your ward, you probably have to take them up with the school, really.
Well, yes. That's fair enough. I know that Councillor Forsyth has written to all the schools, so that's okay. She might want to come in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Anne Forsyth, do you want to come in now?
Yes, I was going to say that the schools are basically in the main know what the needs are, and have that. So for some of the schools, they've said, "Oh yes, please, we're short of 20 computers or something. Yes, please." Others have said, "Actually, we've got it covered already," which is really good. And as Councillor Seary says, that the schools have got an obligation to be providing online lessons, and I certainly know from the school where I'm chair of governors, that's they've got it. So they've got it covered, but nevertheless, it's absolutely right that we have provided them with that, sort of extra support, really, so that they know, and have been very grateful for that offer that some schools have needed to take up.
Yeah, I think this has been an absolutely fantastic project, and hats off to Simon for orchestrating that. Really appreciate it, and certainly my constituents appreciate it. Okay, Mike, do you want to carry on?
Actually, Chair, that brings an end to the finance report. Sorry, Chair, do you want me to go on to the update report, the next agenda item? That's the end of the finance report.
Yes, please, Mike.
Okay, no problem. So, in terms of the update report, included in this February update, we've got contributions from Cleaner Neighbourhoods team, Gully Cleansing, the Community Safety with the West Yorkshire Police, who we heard from earlier through Inspector Philip Gill, Health and Wellbeing through Public Health, the Housing team, the Housing Advisory Panel, Employment and Skills have provided an update, CCTV, the Pudsey Hub, and the social media report. Given the length of the update report, it's been agreed with the chair to take the report as read, as we've done on previous meetings. And there's just a few items from within the report that I was just going to highlight to the committee. Firstly, which is on paragraph 39 on page 7, just relates to the Youth Summit. So as you're aware, the closure of the schools and lockdown has meant that the virtual Youth Summit wasn't able to go ahead this year. The kind of citywide approach and plan means that despite this, we're still going to try and engage with young people in the next few months to get as much information from them as we can. What we'll be doing is promoting and sharing the online link to the survey with all the schools in the area. And I know some of them are already happy to be doing this, and encouraging as many young people as possible to complete the survey, which will give us information about how they want the youth funding to be spent for the next financial year. We're also going to share this link on social media and with partners such as the Youth Service and Breeze to ensure that we get it spread as far wide as possible, just with the emphasis that it's the young people that are to be completing the survey themselves. The consultation is going to stay open until May, and then after that, the report is going to be put together by the Voice and Influence team, and then that'll be presented to the committee at the summer round of meetings. I've also got the link to the survey, which I can send to all of yourselves via email, so that you can also share that with your networks where that's appropriate to do so. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more information on top of what's in the report, because these plans are evolving kind of as we speak. And then secondly, and I'll just try and be brief on this, it's just another update on the social media appendix for the last 3 months. It's just to say really that, again, we've increased in followers on our community committee webpage. We're now with a total of 1,170. So this is the third highest in Leeds. And it's been a fairly busy period for social media with things like a bonfire night, Christmas, New Year, lockdowns, vaccines, as well as trying to provide as much activity for young people as possible through that avenue. The individual ward-based COVID pages, they've continued to post any relevant pandemic and vaccination information. And collectively, we've got the most following of all the community committees in Leeds, which is good. And then in terms of YouTube, the recordings of these meetings has been really encouraging in its feedback. So we've had 3 meetings in this last period of 3 months with a total viewership of 834 views, which is some of the highest numbers across the city. So it's just to say that our kind of engagement in terms of digital media is really encouraging. We're drawing the attention of officers, the public, and services as well. Thank you, Chair. So that's the end of any kind of special mentions from the update report.
David?
Put me right if you're wrong here, but you said the consultation with the children would be reported to the first meeting of the summer round of meetings. Was that right?
Yeah, so the report will be brought to the summer committee meeting. The
thing with that though is our summer meeting is according to what's written here. That's why I didn't hear you. That's why I wasn't listening properly. We're looking at back sheet here. I think it says, yeah, it's on the 7th of July. If we are going to try and back anything for the youngsters that is in the sort of prior to the school holidays or in the school holidays, assuming we can do things, isn't that a bit late? Wouldn't it be better straight after annual meeting in May sometime? Having a meeting about that.
Yes, it would.
Okay, I'll take that feedback to the voice and influence team and see if we can arrange it so that as soon as they've got that information at the end of the consultation, if we can get that information out prior to that meeting as soon as possible after your annual meeting. I'll have a chat with our team and see what can be done there to bring that feedback forward.
Andrew, do you want to come in?
Just a couple of brief points. One was on the gully emptying, and I would like you to feed back, as we actually already have done individually, that the gully emptying in Carvey and Farsley ward still leaves a lot to be desired, as was visible when we had the heavy rain. And it is important they get on top of this. I noticed they haven't even started in Pudsey yet. But also the street cleaning is by no means at an acceptable level, either in Carvey or Farsley or parts of Rodley. And the result of that is that even more rubbish goes down the drains, and so the whole thing goes in a circle. I would like you to bring the appropriate officers, make them aware of that. And the other one is page 57, which is quite a disturbing one as well. Universal credit claimants, interestingly, have gone up significantly since March of last year, as you would expect. I mean, they aren't out of hand, but still very worrying, that have shown a substantial increase, obviously due to COVID. And I suspect people losing their jobs, which underlines the point I made earlier about employment, and the protection of employment should be a top priority.
Is that it, Andrew?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. David, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, just picking up on what Andrew was saying. would it not be, could I suggest, Chair, that we have a meeting of the environmental subgroup? Because we haven't had one for a while, and certainly as we are coming out of winter, there are issues that we need to deal with, and some of them to do with things going down drains as well.
Excellent idea, David. Can you implement that, Mike, please?
Yes, I can. No problem. I'll get in touch with all the parties and we'll get a date in the diary for that.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
We've got any more comments? Okay. So moving on to date and time of next meeting.
Oh, sorry, Chair. There's another report from
Item
me.
12.
12.
We have
Oh, sorry. Yeah, ring fenced. Yeah, ring fenced. Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So, are you happy for me to present that now, Chair?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, lovely. So the ring fences report. This has been brought to the committee for two purposes. The first is to consider some applications that have been received for the upcoming financial year 2021-22 that are able to proceed as stated from the 1st of April. And then secondly, as requested, the report contains a list of projects from Wellbeing and YAF that are regularly funded by the committee. And the list is presented to the committee to consider potentially ring fencing funds for any of these projects for the next year coming up. So firstly, if I could just refer you to table 1, which is on page 2 of that report. This presents the committee with a list of applications received for the new upcoming year. There's 4 so far, and they are all actually the in bloom applications for each area, which have been brought by Parks and Countryside. So I'll just go through them quickly one at a time, but starting with Carvley in Bloom. The request is for £3,194.95, which is to supply, erect and take down and water 16 number 18 hanging pots. The contribution will add to the value of the floral displays in Carvley and link to the wider in bloom displays across the city, and the displays will be maintained and watered by Parks and Countryside.
Okay, any comments, anybody?
I can't, Chair. I chair it, as you know.
Is everybody happy with that?
Can I come in there, Chair? Because I'm having problems finding exactly where this is stated. Can you tell me again, Mike, please?
Sorry, Councillor, of course I can. It's in the ring fences and 2021-22 project applications report on the agenda.
Page 74, Anne.
Page.
Sorry, yeah, page 74.
Right. Right. Okay. Yes.
And you should find a table there,
Yes,
Councillor
yes, I do.
Blackburn. Yeah, lovely.
I think you said page 12 of the other, and I'm looking back and thinking.
Oh, sorry, I've got my pages all mixed up.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, anyway.
No problem.
I think that, yes, obviously, I think we want to ring fence the carbon, etc. The site-based gardener, most definitely. And I think really we should be looking at when it comes to the in bloom. I think my ward should maybe be looking to apply for some more money there, because you know, we solve people, I think, sometimes maintaining them themselves, but it does depend on the groups what they want to apply for. And I must admit, as you know, we don't have a centre, so I can understand Pudsey wanting to have their centre looking nice and that. But I do think that it's something we want to look at. So I think maybe we should be putting in for something there as far as that goes. But other than that, yes, other than that, that's fair enough.
Thank you, Anne. So can I bring in Councillor Anne for Safe, then Andrew?
Thank you. Just one point is only the one for the new family in Bloom that mentions actually purchasing the plants from the nursery, the council nursery. Do the other ones purchase from the area as well? It's just not mentioned. I was just clarifying, really.
Andrew, would you like to answer? And Simon.
Yeah. I mean, the as far as I know, all these grants here go direct to Parks and Countryside. So Arium provide all of what is sent there. But if you look at the displays, then particularly in Pudsey and Carvley, and increasingly in Farsley, they're done by the voluntary groups, and they've all been struggling to raise money for obvious reasons, because we've not been able to do anything. So I'll just speak generally. The key to success is to get a small group of committed people who go out and plant up the tubs, speak to the people who live adjacent, ask them to maintain them, water them, and it works. It's a system that works very well. And I know that both Pudsey and Carvley have registered with the council to enter the summer judging for Yorkshire in Bloom this year. And I hope in Farsley we're going to reach the stage where we can do something similar, because it's got a good centre. And I'm just trying to arrange a sponsor for the cenotaph in Farsley. I'm in discussions with the Parks Department at the moment to get that sponsored, and then the Parks Department will deal with it, but it'll be paid for by a sponsor. So again, it helps Parks and Countryside maintain their level of business. So
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so then we've got David, then Trish.
Just coming in on the funding for the In Bloom groups. As I chaired Green Leeds, it used to fund quite a lot of the stuff. I mean, particularly Pudsey In Bloom has got lots and lots of stuff that were from Green Leeds. With Green Leeds going defunct, with us not having any landfill tax money anymore, that has made a great hole in the areas where In Bloom groups could get funded, and the In Bloom groups across the city got piles of things from Green Leeds, and that did help to actually build up the In Bloom groups. The problem Newfoundland is Newfoundland fairly new, so it's got to build up, and it hasn't got the ability to pump in resources like from organisations like Green Leeds.
Okay, Trish.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of Pudsey In Bloom, Simon and I have been in touch with them. They sadly aren't entering the Yorkshire In Bloom competition this year. Post-COVID, they just feel it's too much for them to take on, which is sad, but maybe next time. But they are, considering taking on other things for us. And in answer to Anne Forsyth's question, they buy from the area wherever they can. So, yeah, very good.
Thanks, Trish. Mike, have you got anything else on that?
No, so just can I clarify, are you happy then for these 4 In Bloom projects to be approved for next year?
Is everybody happy about that? Can we agree? Second silence is meaning yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's all right, Mike.
Lovely. And then next up is just the ring fence considerations. So we've got table 2 on the next page. So first up, we've got a list of well-being projects that are frequently approved by the committee. So it's just have a look through this list and see if there are any that the committee wants to ring fence funds for in advance. So at the top, we've got the small grants and skips, £5,000, the community engagement, £1,000, and the CCTV at £11,000, which are three normally ring fenced projects. Is there any comment on any of those three to start with?
Anybody got any comments? Simon?
Sorry, I think Trish would be for me. Good, Trish.
Trish, sorry. Trish?
That's okay, no problem, thanks. I was just going to ask, can we make sure that the CCTV amount is correct? Because in previous years, it's never been correct and they've always had to come back for more money. So I think with money being so tight, I think we need to make sure that we are asking for the right amount to be ring fenced, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, Simon, do you want to come in?
I think Andrew's before me as well, Councillor Carter, sorry.
Fire away, Andrew.
Yeah, I think we should agree these. I have to say, I think that just to report on, which I think committee members ought to have really, on the Christmas lights, I have to say that the communities in Farsley, Rodley and Carvley did a good job in, I won't say anything about Pudsey, having got Pudsey in Blooms entering the competition wrong, but I hope they might reconsider and put it like that. It's a bit more difficult in Pudsey because some of the projects are quite big and social distancing will be a problem. But in Carvley, we can get individuals to deal with individual things so we can avoid the social distancing issues. However, back to Christmas lights, the community sing-song on people's doorsteps in Farsley and in Rodley went really very well, considering it was organised pretty much from scratch and took the place of any other festivities in Town Street. And in Carvley, they had the great Carvley elf hunt, which was extremely interesting, I have to say, but also was well received, and it shows what can be done even in significant restrictions. But I think the fact we were able to put the Christmas lights on was a big booster to people in these difficult times, and hopefully in the coming year we can organise the normal, or as near normal as possible, community involvement. It particularly is important this year because, very disappointingly, the council have decided to cut back on the town and district centre capital monies for small project improvements in our district centres. So it sounds a lot, but it isn't in the scheme of the whole council budget, £2.7 million. I think it's a great pity because we are going to need to do everything we can to encourage our district centres, and I speak particularly about Farsley and Pudsey. It isn't just Leeds City Centre that's taken a hell of a hammering, which it has through COVID, but our small district centres as well. And they're crucial to stimulating the local economy. And so things like Christmas lights and the carnival in Pudsey and then Farsley Festival we're mentioning later on are crucial because they all generate economic activity. And so it really is important we press ahead with these things.
Okay. Sorry, can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
I apologise.
Come in, Trish.
But I completely agree with Andrew. I mean, we've gone from a pot of 150,000 down to a potential pot of 30,000. What are we supposed to do when we've lost £120,000? You know, we're doing everything we can to revitalise our communities. We've got the Pudsey Lottery going. We've got the My Pudsey website due to launch. You know, we're doing everything we can possibly do. We've got the Carnival, the Scarecrow Festival, the Soapbox Derby. You know, we've got the Children in Need. I mean, our Christmas lights is the second outside Leeds, I think, that are so, they're so fantastic. And yet the council at every turn are just cutting our knees off. You know, we need the help in the west of the city, never mind the south and the east, which is where all the money seems to pour. Let's have our fair share in the west. I think, you know, we need our pots of money, and we need to fight for all of our money back. And I know I'm really passionate about this because it takes up a lot of my waking hours in trying to fight for what we deserve. And, you know, things like the lottery and the My Pudsey website, they don't take overnight to come together. But we just seem to be losing out at every turn. And I think that needs feeding back to officers. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, I think that's very well said, Trish, because Outer West seems to be the last at every turn. You know, they talked the other meeting about Richmond House, about, you know, our area being the only area without that sort of provision. And it just seems that the Outer West is left out every single time. Quite right. Okay, David, did you want to come in there?
Yes, please. Just on the Christmas lights, and then I've got three things to say actually. On the Christmas lights, are we sure that the amount of money we've got there will be what it will cost us? Bearing in mind, I know the original plan has been changed where they were going to do with the lighting people, but are we sure that costs aren't going to go up? That's one question from there. Then another question, have we any news on the application for lights at New Farmland Cricket Club, right? And then my final comment, and this is aimed at Trish and Simon and that. I'm sorry to hear you're not going to be entering Pudsey in Bloom competition. But I still hope you're going to have something like the treacle mine or something like that between Butchers and Library.
I'm sure we will, David.
Okay, Simon, did you want to come in?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. As like we said, you know, the Christmas lights, we need the same. Costs are not going to be increased, but how are they going to make cost savings if the costs are going to be passed on to, you know, the area? So we need to watch, you know, how much each motif is going to cost us in the end. Also with the Pudsey and Bloom, they want to enjoy the work that they do. They're concerned that everything's built up for just 1, 2, 3 visits. It's a lot of pressure on a group that should be enjoying what they're doing. You know what I mean? Improving the town centre. And that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Before I just bring Mike in, I think I did ask for a 3% to be built into that because we anticipated the costs going up. Mike?
Yes, you did. So those figures that you see are initially based on this year's, 2020 to 21's amounts. And then as you requested, Chair, I've added 3% onto those costs to cover for any slight increase in funds. And all I'd say is that in terms of the spend this year, I think 3 of the 4 areas we've got underspend on those ring fence funds. So we didn't spend that full amount anyway. So it feels comfortable that we should be okay with these amounts. But as you say, if we can get some costs sooner rather than later from Leeds Lights and see where we're at, but I think we should be comfortable to have covered ourselves with the amounts that we're ring fencing here.
Chair, I think
Go ahead,
if I'm just interject, I think Mike's right. I think the 3% allowance and the fact there was a slight underspend in various bits and pieces because of what we weren't able to do last year ought to see us right. But as Simon knows, the additional costs that we have to find locally through approaching everybody we can to financially support us is considerable. And I guess things like public liability insurance is going to be considerably more than previous because of COVID. So we've a pretty steep hill to climb. But given that we get this and that the council will do the lights within the cost here, I think we've a fighting chance that we can put on a good displays everywhere.
Thank you, Andrew. David?
Mike was going. I asked Mike about our new Farmland Cricket Club lights.
Sorry, yes, you did
thing
ask.
on you.
So they requested an application form, I think it was 2 weeks ago, which I've sent through, and just advised them if they need any help completing it to let me know. I've not received anything back from them yet, councillor, so I might just give them a call and just see if they need any assistance.
Okay, thanks for information. Okay, Ta.
No problem.
Have we lost the chair there, Mike?
I think we might have, yes.
Councillor Carter, the chair, are you there?
The camera's off and she's on mute.
Councillor Andrew Carter, do we still have the chair?
I'll find out for you. I'll look in the next room.
Okay, thank you.
I'm all tense waiting here. Yeah.
She's got to make them a cuppa.
Can we just remember that we are still live? Thank you.
She's lost the signal. David, carry on.
Okay, right. Cheers, Andrew. Right, so I think we're on Yaff ring fence start with now, Mike.
Yeah, so if we're happy to ring fence those well-being ones above, we can move on to Yaff. So the next table is the same process really. I've listed projects that get approved or tend to be approved by the committee. So we've got the Youth Summit ring fence, the Dazzle programme, Andy's Youth Project, the Farnley Youth Club, the Pudsey Youth Cafe, the Farnley Football Project, the Farsley Festival, which has been included on the Yaff list here, and then the Breeze Friday Night Project. Unless I've missed any others out, these seem to be the main ones that get approved from the Yaff budget.
Any comments?
With those, Chair.
Peter.
Thanks, Chair. I'm happy with all of those. I just wanted to add a possible one. Obviously, over the last summer, because of some of the difficulties we faced, we arranged those extra summer sports sessions from the youth service. Looking to Easter and who knows where we'll be then, and then look into the summer. If we're not able to have indoor youth provision as much as we had, I wonder whether we should think about getting in touch with the youth service and seeing what they can do in terms of outdoor sports and getting that arranged. If we therefore get to mid to end of March and outdoor activity is allowed but indoor activity isn't yet, then I think we should try starting up those. So I wonder whether if people agree, you could have conversations, Mike, around those sessions and see if we could include them in the list.
Sounds like a very good idea to me, that does. Andrew.
Yes, David, and I think we've got just the place to fund it, because if we're all three wards underspent on the government money on COVID, this sort of thing would fit the bill ideally, helping young people get some exercise outside, socially distancing, and we can pay for it, can't we?
Very good idea, I think. So we'll come back to that. Have we come back to that when we have the special meeting in March?
Please.
I'll get quotes ahead of that then.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. Are we all right with the table 3? We'll take it with the silence. We are right. So what's next? Oh, it's right. We're on agenda item 13 now. Set dates, times, and venues of community committees in next year.
I think the key is, Chair, that the first one is far too long away.
I knew you'd be laughing.
Can I just come in there, Chair? I mean, the report obviously proposes 4 business meetings for the new year. And you have mentioned before that the 7th of July does seem a long way away. I've been in contact with the localities officer, Mike, and could we suggest that maybe we look at dates in June, which might be preferable to you?
Yeah. Okay. Does that seem all right to everybody?
Yes.
If I can get some dates together, we obviously have to be mindful that we may still be on Zoom then. And at the moment, we can only stream 2 meetings at a time. So I will have to make sure that the dates are okay. But are you happy with me to have a look for that and come back to you with a date?
Yeah, if you would.
For the first meeting?
Okay. Trish Smith.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just wondered if it could be earlier in June rather than later, just so that we do have that lead time into the summer holidays, as was mentioned earlier, please.
I'll try and look for the earliest in June I can.
Thank you.
Andrew.
No, sorry, my hand was still raised on
the
old screen. It's gone now.
Councillor Anne Blackburn.
Well, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask if we could cut out the background noise. Sometimes I'm hearing voices. And no, I'm not.
I'm terribly sorry about that, but my husband works for the council as well, and he's on some calls, I'm afraid. So when I'm speaking, he may still be speaking as well. So I'm terribly sorry about that.
I didn't know where it was coming from, but now and again it was coming in, and I thought, well, if I could hear it, I would imagine, as you said, we are live on YouTube. So if anybody's listening to us, they'll be able to hear it as well. Okay, thank you.
Right, is there anything else? With that silence, I take it that we're all right with what we've just proposed. For
Chair,
the
can I just check that all the dates are approved, other than the July ones? So 6th of September, 8th of November, and the 16th of February are all approved by the members.
Are we in approval? I've just seen nodding heads. Right, okay then. And then I think with that,
thank you.
I think we can close the meeting, can't we? I think we've done everything we should have done. Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. And we'll hopefully see you all again in June. Well, see some of you before that, probably. Okay. See you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. David. Bye.
Thank you very much. Can we turn off the stream, please?